Expo Center. They can just join us as we get going. So we're very excited. This is our second of this particular presentation of the day. BYOD is very popular. How many of you guys are doing anything around BYOD now? Just raise your hand. Kind of, sort of, in between. Okay, so I guess the reason why you haven't gone, you're scared to death. No? Or you haven't got policies around it yet, or trying to build up network infrastructure, that sort of thing?
We're looking for the problem that it solves.
Very good.
Okay, I'm going to tell you that.
Yes. Yeah, so the great thing is that you're in the right place. We have two great presenters today. We have Ken Woody, Director of Technology from Guilford County Schools. He's going to be up first to talk a little bit about what they're doing in Guilford County Schools. We also have Terry Bledsoe, CIO from Catawba County. He's going to talk what they're doing in Catawba County. So those questions that you have, please keep them on the pot, so to speak, during their presentations. They're going to have about 20, 25 minutes apiece. And then right after that, we're going to open it up for some conversation. Okay? So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ken, and we'll get this thing rolling.
Well, hello, everyone. I know it's the afternoon, but you do better than that. Hello, everyone. Okay. I think it might be helpful if you have a little bit of an idea of Guilford County Schools, who we are. Guilford County Schools is located in the center of the state. We are the third largest district in the state of North Carolina. We have approximately 73,000 kids, around 10,000 employees. Sometime during the summer, I was asked to put together the preparatory information for a strategic initiative which gets announced in January of 2013, so coming up this January, where the district is going to start reallocating some of the funds that were typically going out to schools to actually go into fund a BYOD initiative. In addition to that, I just found out a few months ago that our system is also pursuing Race to the Top District. For those of you within the school districts, would be probably fairly familiar with that government offering. And that is to support a one-to-one initiative, which, of course, means even more so. Right now, we have been using our Race to the Top money to increase our wireless networks in our elementary schools. Right now, in the elementary schools, by the end of this school year, we'll have all elementary schools at a one access point per 2 classroom ratio. As you go through my slides, you'll understand why that is fine until you start hitting those saturation points, in which case that would probably no longer be satisfactory any longer. There is a lot of information on these slides. I am not going to read all the information. Basically, this was so that you can have the information. These slides are available for the conference, and you can certainly get that information, more detailed information on the slides from there. When we're talking here about the BYOD, in the education, how many education people in school systems do we have? Okay, got a couple, and the rest of them will be local government. A lot of what we're going to talk about does overlap, and I think you still find it valuable. You'll hear terms like BYOD, bring your own device, bring your own BYOT, bring your own technology, BYOPT, bring your own perfect technology, and I just heard one today. It was BYOLD, bring your own learning device. It's kind of differentiated from. But the reality is, all these terms, they're just coins of phrase. We're talking about saturation, the influx of consumerized products into our enterprise environments. That's what this is all about. And you're going to hear a lot more about this coming up. But the reality is, the people who are coming into our systems now, the educators we have, the employees we have, they're very used to using whatever they're going to use, and they want to use what they're comfortable with. And they don't particularly care if it works within your network. They're going to find ways and trying to get around what you do in order to bring their devices in. It's just going to happen. Once we looked at this, we realized that mobile devices gives us an opportunity to do some things and to address some issues, particularly around having technology available for the kids. Now, there's one thing that you're going to see, and I think this next slide. The units are less expensive compared to PCs. That's true because if it's a BYOD, they're bringing their own device, right? They're buying it themselves. But I don't want you to be fooled. BYOD initiatives are not less expensive. Okay? Do not let anybody tell you that. They're not less expensive. You have to have the network infrastructure in order to support all these different devices coming in. So the best you're going to probably come up with is the cost neutral. Okay? They do cost money. So as you build out your network to support all these wireless devices, you're going to find that there is a cost. Now the advantage on price does come on the newest and greatest. We as IT departments cannot always supply the newest and greatest of everything. There's no way we can afford that. But with individuals taking on the cost ownership themselves, they can keep themselves on the cutting edge, or as I like to think of it, the bloody edge, as much as they like. And if we develop networks that are device agnostic, they can still take advantage of those resources without taking up our technology funds to do it. We do believe that this will increase the learning access to learning materials within the classroom. It'll provide opportunities for collaborating and sharing. They're popular. Kids love to use these things, so it helps with that engagement piece. Now, for Guilford County Schools, we considered within the scope of this, and that's why we're doing the Race to the Top district as a one-to-one, is you run into the issue of equity. Okay, what do you do with the have-nots, the kids who can't afford these things? Well, that's where the one-to-one initiatives will start coming in. When you're looking at the bandwidth, when you're looking at your implementation plan, you need to consider some broad areas. Bandwidth. Do you have wireless coverage? Adequate wireless coverage? Are your critical applications going to be covered? We're running into some interesting things. Online testing. For those of you who are in education, 2014 is a big year for us. All the state BYOD tests are going to be administered online, which means all my principals who've gone about and dismantled their labs, they're going to have to figure out how they're going to conduct tests when they have 3 computers in each and every classroom instead of 1 lab or 30. But the reality is they're going to have to figure it out because 2014 is a non-negotiable. It's this entire state is going to do this. Okay, we really strongly believe trying to remain device agnostic. When we develop our networks, we want it so that whatever you bring can connect to the network and it connects easily so that you can do what you need to do. We want it to be simple. We want the users to be able to manage their own devices. Right now, in Guilford County Schools, the device-to-technician ratio is 1,000 to 1. With a one-to-one initiative, that's going to move to 2,500 to 1. With a one-to-one initiative and a BYOD, if we were actually supporting those devices, that would be 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 to 1. And you can all see that math. It just doesn't work. Can't do it. So we needed to come up with a mechanism by which the users are going to manage their own devices as much as possible. So we're going to make this easy. Now, also, something I meant to say this in the last one. In the last session, some of the conversations go around telephones. For us as Guilford County Schools, telephones, we've been bring your own device for a very long time. Our email system is Exchange, so it's an Outlook. And so when users connect to that, they get a dialogue that says, if you connect to this for your work email, be aware that we can turn off your device anytime we please. They click OK because they never read it. And every single device that is connected to the Guilford County Schools email it is fully within the control of our exchange servers. So that's never been an issue for us. So primarily this conversation is around tablet devices. Okay. We want to develop a network to protect the other devices against malware. We talked about this a little bit further. We use a product that allows us to have NAC, Network Access Control, which basically, as the device connects to the network, it's scanned, you have the current virus protection. If the answer is no, you are denied access to the internet, so it just doesn't allow you to connect. Okay, district-owned mobility device that are lost or stolen can be locked and wiped cleanly and remotely. That's an MDM solution. Right now, Guilford County Schools uses a product called AirWatch. Does anybody in here use AirWatch? It's a fairly it's a kind of an industry standard. It's a pretty solid product. There are other things out there. I do recommend for mobile devices that you may want to think about a mobile device management solution. It doesn't matter what you pick, but you need something to keep a track of what is out there and what they're doing. Now, with that having been said, there are lots of considerations that come into mobile devices that when you enter into these personally owned devices, things can get a little sticky really quick. Things like apps. One of the things that we're running into with iPads. iPads are real popular. Everybody have that issue. It's a religion in my school system. We have the Appleites. They are quite zealot in their approach to these things. And the thing with the Apples is while they are a phenomenal consumer device, second to none, there's nothing even close to what they are. They are an enterprise nightmare. One of the things that we've seen happen time and time again is principals will buy 10, 15, 100, 300 of these things. It's happened. And they'll give teachers iTunes gift cards so they go and buy apps. Well, I think everybody in here knows. If you don't, I'm going to tell you right now. When you give a teacher an iTunes gift card, yes, they go out and they can buy apps, and they put it on that company-owned iPad. Yay. What happens when that teacher leaves? The license to that app goes with that teacher. It's gone. Who is legally responsible for that unlicensed software when that teacher leaves? You are. You own that licensing problem. So be aware when you're doing these iPads that if you don't set up a system whereby they keep track of who's bought what and make sure that they wipe these devices out each time somebody leaves, you can find yourself in a licensing nightmare very quickly. And if you're in a large district such as mine, and we're currently at 4,000 iPads just roaming around, we are definitely going to be outside of license. Somebody screwed up somewhere. I'm just waiting for that day to come. Right now, there is no way to manage those. Mobile device management solutions will not give you your answers there. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I'm just trying to make sure that you're aware of the realities that you live in. Now, the Android devices, you can actually create your own Android marketplaces so you can control what software is allowed to load on your managed machines. So that's a little bit of an advantage on the Android side versus the iPad side, but the iPads are so much more popular. Your buy-in for them is so much easier, so you have to kind of trade off. Personally, I'm kind of crossing my fingers and hoping that Windows 8 has a lot of things that people are going to look for. It might make some of that transition to these mobile devices a little bit easier. Our concerns are make sure that we have wireless coverage. Right now, what we found is in our elementary schools, which we're currently deploying our APs using the Race to Top funds, we're doing one access point to 2 classrooms. But the problem is, it seems like when you hit about 30 units, about 30 mobile devices connecting to an access point, you about hit where those access points are going to start behaving. Beyond that point, I'm going to throw my technical term, they get a little gummy. They start behaving weirdly, they start dropping connections. iPads are particularly bad about this. For those of you who didn't know this, wireless networks have an interesting function. Is the device that is connected the farthest away from the access point dictates the speed of all the devices that are connected to the access point. So you want to set your access points so you do not have devices that are connecting from long distances, because those are going to slow down everything that's currently connected. You will get those phone calls, oh, it's so slow, I can't use it. Well, when you go and you do a search, everything looks fine. But then when you come in and you look and see how it's being utilized, there'll be somebody who will be down the hall who's connecting, checking their email on their iPad or their Android device when that teacher's having a class, and that person's dictating the speed for everybody else. So you have to be kind of careful with that. Having wireless access controls, available bandwidth. This is going to be a big issue for us. Right now in Guilford County Schools, we don't have a BYOD policy. I mean, it's not deployed. We have some policies that affect BYOD, but we have guest networks. Right now for the district, and we're a sizable district, this is a big number. Every single day, we have 8,000 to 12,000 non-Guilford County Schools managed devices connecting to our guest networks. Every single day. That doesn't count the stuff that we've actually bought. That's just what people are bringing in. That's before we start advertising BYOD. Okay, so when we hit the BYODs, we're expecting that number to probably increase something in the order of 3 to 4. And that'll be every day. And we're expecting that will also impact that bandwidth. To help with this, we're also looking at some bandwidth optimizations a little bit later on. I can show you what the products we're looking at to help with that. Device security, technical support. Again, different people have different opinions on this. Our policy has been that if it is not owned by Guilford County Schools, we don't touch it. That way, we don't take on any of the legal liabilities should something happen to that device. That's working for us. It may not work for you, but it needs to be something that's part of your consideration process when you're looking at BYOD. Okay, we're looking at doing this in phases. We have 4 general phases. Our first phase is, and we're in the process of planning this out, and actually we're buying the components to make these parts work here. Bandwidth optimization, wireless access control with 802.1x authentication, and a few slides further out, I'll explain that. We are already seeing that we probably want to move to a 1 access point per classroom model. Okay, that's expensive. No doubts about it. I'm not going to pretend. We run all Cisco everywhere. Cisco is premium product that gives us good service, so that's what we stick with. If you use something else, that's fine, but you need to make sure that you're, excuse me, I'm very little voice. You need to make sure whatever you're using is pretty robust. We're also, with phase 1, we're asking for additional support personnel. That is the most likely thing to be cut from the request. It's just people are the most expensive element of this, and adding those people are going to be the most difficult part of the thing. Now, before I get ahead of myself, I actually said this at the first and the last session. I meant to say it again this time. All this stuff I'm showing you, this is actually all the easy parts. I'm going to be real serious with you. This is all the easy parts. This is all technical stuff. These are stuff that we do all the time. You can come to me and say, Ken, I want you to build a robust network. I have teams who can do that all day long. Plan it and make it work. The really hard part behind all this, I want to make sure I say these words, it has nothing to do with the technology. It has to do with the professional development and making sure that that teacher in that classroom, when this BYOD gets launched, they're now a teacher in a classroom. They've been advised that you're going to be teaching classes with BYOD. So now you have a classroom with 10 kids with laptops and different OSs. 5 kids now with Palm devices or smartphones or you name it. And now they're supposed to create an instructional plan that incorporates all those devices and make that instruction meaningful. So, in my opinion, this is exciting for me because this is cool stuff. We get to touch new tech. We get to do stuff that we're good at. But where my sympathies really lie, or those teachers are going to have to take all this and actually make something special in the classroom. I wanted to make sure I said those words. Okay, in our phase 2, we're going to look at high schools. Again, we're going to try to go to the 1-to-1 ratio for AP class, and 1 to 30 is our sweet spot where we're trying to get one access point per 30 devices being connected. Again, we're going to look to add more support personnel. Phase 3, half our elementary schools. Currently they're 1 to 2, so this will be our lightest lift. Our high schools and middle schools, they have a hodgepodge. They're all over the place. So they're going to be our heaviest lifts, phase 1 and phase 2, moving them to the 1-to-1. But this will be our lightest lift as far as APs. Again, our sweet spot is 1 to 30, add additional personnel. Phase 4, our final phase, finish out the elementary schools. We're going to be trying to get to that 1 to 30, adding more support personnel, ongoing, be support personnel, and adding bandwidth. Okay? We've been looking at policies and procedures. I'm sorry, I got cut off there. We are in the process now of developing student staff appropriate use, so guidelines, rules for the road, what we can do, what we can't do for you. We talking about theft and loss, home use versus school use. Other related topics. One I want to mention for those of you in the instructional space is in instructional space, everybody knows about SIPA, right? Yeah, that's your requirement to filter. You have an absolute requirement to filter. Well, what do you do if the device the student brings in uses its own 3G or 4G card? You can't filter it, can we? What does that classroom management look like in that kind of environment? Okay, so these are some other issues that are worth thinking about. We've been talking, our programmers are now starting to look at application development. We're looking at application selecting and purchasing, and this is a big issue with equity, those haves and those have-nots. Okay. Some of this I've kind of already covered. Some of this goes a little bit faster in these sections. Again, these slides are available off the conference website. Again, we're looking for a 1-to-1 and with a overall ratio of 1 access point to 30 units. We are a Cisco shop. We're planning to probably stick within that platform. We're currently in the 1000 series, 1100, 1200 series, and 35, 3600 series. These are probably where we're going to see a lot of our newer stuff. Controllers, we're currently with Wisdom 1s. We're about ready to move up, and we've already bought some of our Wisdom 2s, so we're expanding to the higher level access controllers. This will become very important. Controlling those access points through a centralized mechanism is probably going to be the strongest thing to help you through the BYOD woes. Okay. One of the things, and I'm going to go ahead and skip to achieve this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about these and essentially what they're going to do for us. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a single access ID. So when somebody comes into a school, they'll see just one thing. It says GCS network. They'll connect to that. These devices here are going to be what will allow that network to say, okay, that is a GCS laptop. It was GCS purchased. It is allowed to access the authenticated network, and therefore is allowed to have full access to servers and everything. Okay. In that same room, somebody comes in with an iPad. It's still a GCS purchase, but iPads have fewer security issues. So we're going to go ahead and allow it to come in, but it's going to be on a separate network where it can access and do the things that it wants to do. We see somebody come in and they have a netbook they just bought from them. They bring it in, and the NAC's going to kick in and say, well, you don't have the update virus protection. You need to update that first. Oh, and now that you update that, you can connect, but you're only allowed the lowest level guest access with the smallest amount of bandwidth. So each device, we can determine how much bandwidth that they're allowed. So the device then can determine how much bandwidth you're allowed based on who you are and what that device is. So that's going to give us a lot of power to control how much bandwidth we're taking up as we expand. And bandwidth will become a big issue. Okay. Right now, our administrative sites are usually around 10 megabytes. We're going to bump those up to 100 megabytes. High schools are 100 megabytes. We're going to bump those to 1 gigabyte. Middle schools are 100 megabytes. We're going to bump those to 1 gigabyte. Elementary schools are 50. We're going to bump them to 100. All alternative skills are 10, going to 100. And our Metro E-Core was 900. We're going to 1 gig. And we've already achieved that. We're already, even before we launched BYOD, we're running at 70+% capacity. So that number will have to change to 2 gigs probably within a year. And we're looking at 5-year projection, maybe requiring 10 gig external pipe. These are big numbers, guys. But when you start getting to the BYOD universe, it gets big, it goes fast. The idea is you have to plan for it before it happens, because if it hits you like a steamroller, it's just going to roll over you. But if you plan for it, you give it a path to go on, then you have a little bit more control about what happens. Does that kind of make sense? You guys are hanging in with me there on the afternoon. I really appreciate that. Okay, for bandwidth optimization, I kind of mentioned that. We're really going to look at optimizing use for certain software. So if you're a state software, you're going to be allowed more bandwidth than non-state software. The device prioritized applications, device traffic. We're hoping to reduce the network overhead, kind of slow down that bandwidth creep, which is going to happen, and allocate guaranteed resources for critical applications and devices. I.e., the superintendent should never not have bandwidth. It's important. Okay. A lot of this you can see it. You can look up this information on that's the product we're looking at doing on this on. I'm going to give just a couple minutes so you can ask me questions, and then I can certainly answer more questions when we get to the end. Any questions from me? Yes, sir.
Has your software approval process changed from before BYOD to after?
Not really, no. The big issue, and I think I know where you're going with it, is how do people with the personal device access network software? We're trying very hard to make as much of our software available through web-based applications, so our programmers are working that way. But the reality is there's still performance software packages that are not going to be licensed on these BYOD devices. We're considering things like Citrix and VMware to allow us to do application virtualization to allow us to overcome that. We're looking at Office 360 as a big tool to help us overcome that. And I'll admit we're scrambling. We're trying to come up with how we're going to achieve these things on these devices. The problem is there are so many different devices. I'll give you a real good example that's come out of my university. Is just recently I've discovered that my department is responsible for coming up with an e-reader policy. It's great, huh? E-reader policy. So we start doing research. Okay, how many e-readers could they possibly be? There's 250 at our first go at it. And so I have a book this thick of what each of them are, whether or not they're still manufactured, whether or not we can use the MDM solution on them, how much bandwidth they take up. And they're all possible. You know, any school can have any one of these 250 devices. And just this last week, 4 new devices just came out. We're going to have to come up with a way of making this easier. And I'm not going to promise you we're going to have. I teased him at first. This BYOD successful. I wonder if I'm going to be a BYOD tragedy by the time this is all over. All I know is I'm trying my best to plan as much as I can to make this as smooth as I can for the district. But we have taken on some really big goals. I know you asked me a small question, but there's lots of things really kind of connected to that. Yes, sir.
Mine sort of feeds right off of that. The biggest question I have is, from the programming aspect, I'm sorry, programmer, how do you prevent going from BYOD, how do you prevent it from becoming a situation where you're always going to the least common denominator?
I'll tell you how we hope to achieve that, is by prioritizing certain devices. We're a SharePoint shop, for example. Okay, you can access SharePoint on an iPad, so you can access it and you can do the things, but you get better performance off of SharePoint if you're working through a Windows device. We let it be known up front. You can access it, but if you don't have Office on your, I don't know, Office comes for an iPad, but if there's not Office for the iPad, then you can't open up the Word documents that are stored there. And so we're prioritizing. These are the devices we know work with what we're publishing. If you wish to do that, then that is on you. So that's the personal responsibility for those BYODs. Is it a great solution? No. Is it at least an effort to try to keep things under control? That's the best we have, because the politics is right now, there are lots of really glitzy, interesting things out there, and there's a lot more of those things than I have people to learn about them. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, in the beginning of your talk, you alluded to the fact that in 2014, EOG will be processed electronically. It's a requirement.
Yeah, it's going to be web-based, yes, sir.
And I don't know, but, and I'm connecting dots that I don't think you intended, but does BYOD, have you thought about 2014 and Guilford County's implementation of the EOG?
Look, the answer is absolutely yes, and here is the. I have to keep those separated for this one reason. This iPad, this iPad can access the web resource and will come up. But if I were a test administrator, I would never, under any circumstances, allow a student to take an end-of-course exam on an iPad. And the simple reason why it's built into the iPad are all the tools necessary to duplicate that entire exam, post it on YouTube in a matter of seconds. So if you think of each individual version of an exam costs on average $4 million, one student, one district can invalidate the entire test for however many millions of kids throughout the state and cause the state a loss of $4 million for a version of a test in the space of the time that a teacher is collecting materials.
So you'd have to put some guardrails in the road relative to, I mean, if it were wireless and if it were electronic, you have some restrictions on device, and in fact, you might even be controlling the device.
Yeah, but the iPads and the Androids, neither one of them have sufficient guardrails to allow that to happen. Now, is it possible in the future? Yes, but right now, I don't see it in the near term because Apple has no incentive to allow that level of control.
What does it mean then for most schools? More desktop devices that aren't necessarily allocated?
Well, honestly, I see us needing to we need to do a couple things as educators. One, we're hanging our hat too much on standardized tests, okay? And until we fight and win that battle, we are continuing. Right now, our fourth grade kids, I feel for them in such amazing ways. They are tested, and I think I did the math. 8 weeks out of their school year is taken up with some test for something. So 8 weeks they're doing nothing but sitting and taking a standardized test for something. At some point, somebody's going to have to stand up and say it doesn't work. The other thing is the device manufacturers are going to have to get on board that if these devices are being used in these environments, then there has to be some understanding. Apple sells themselves as education friendly. They're not. They're going to have to stand up and be what they claim to be. Otherwise, these products, that the iPad will never work. The Android can be locked down a lot more than the iPad can. So technically, right now they can work. The full version of the Apple laptops, easy peasy. Full version of easy peasy, by the way, is a technical term. The Microsoft laptops, again, easy peasy, not a problem. But if tablets are the way of the future, then tablets have to mature to the point where they can be enterprise ready. They're not enterprise ready right now.
Good job.
Yes, sir.
Can we go to questions? We got to the end so we can get Terry's presentation in. So I don't want to run out of.
I think Ken just brought me a perfect introduction here because my philosophy on a lot of things is a little bit different. In that Coffee County has been bring your own device, and we've been doing a lot of things for the last 2 years, or maybe even a little bit longer than 2 years. To answer some of your questions, thinking has to change for this to work, because these are devices that are here to stay, and we're going to have to learn how to adapt to them instead of trying to control them. So that's hard to do, and sometimes it might be expensive. Your programming, you're talking about, most of the programming philosophy today is you start with a computer and then you try to adapt down. That's the wrong way. We have to start with the lower end and adapt up. And that's a hard way of changing thinking. But I wanted to talk with you a little bit differently in terms of bring your own device. Now, I'm assuming, since this is a technical group, most of you are probably connected to the hilt, right? Does everybody have a smart device in here? Okay, so you're connected, right? Now, I'm going to ask you a few questions. How many of you have, and let's just start out, how many of you have an iPhone? Okay, how many of you have an Android device? Okay, how many of you have something else? Okay, now suppose I ask, I'm not going to ask what else.
It's an old thing called BlackBerry. I don't know
What? And no problem with that, because that's your chosen one. Okay, let's suppose you're those iPhone folks. I come in and say, okay, glad you got an iPhone, but we're going to use Android. What you going to do? I see a frowny face on a couple people. And those Android folks, we're going to force you to use an iPhone. What are you going to do? No, really, what are you going to do? I'm asking that a real question here.
You provided, I don't care. My response to that.
You provided, I don't care.
A lot of places that we mutiny.
A lot of places that are mutiny. And then there's an age thing, aren't there? So, what I'm saying is, if we try to lock things down and lock people in place, we create problems for ourselves. Maybe as many or not more problems than trying to deal with bring your own device. But it's not just about the device. There is so much more that goes along with this. How do you program for those devices? How do you secure those devices? You know, what programs do they run on? Besides that, you know, this is all followed by bring your own apps, bring your own cloud, and setting up an environment as an employee that may not be even attached to your work. So there's a lot of questions that go along with this, and you know, how do you handle them? No, there's a whole lot of apps out there. How many apps you got on that thing? I don't know. But there's probably apps on there that I bet you pay somewhere between $5 and $20 for that are as powerful as some apps you had on your PC 5 years ago. Maybe even more powerful, right? Because you got some cheap apps there, and they'll do a lot of things, and especially location type data and so forth, that may be even better than anything we had at the enterprise level a couple years ago. So the technology that's coming with them is really good. But there's also something else that's happening, and this is what I meant about generations a while ago. What motivates people to stay with you? And in government, you know, sometimes we have trouble getting in the talent that we need simply because of that salary level that's down here as opposed to way up here. And if you look at that, how do you motivate people to come to work for you? And once you get them there, how do you keep them there? Toys? Not really toys. Let's look at them in a little bit different way. This is Gen Y. This is your youngest workers. And they want access to Facebook and a number of other things. But I think probably if you look at it, they just want to use technology and be connected all the time. That study came out with Facebook. Right now, the Generation Y and up to a certain point, Generation X, what's the average stay at a business today for them?
A couple of years.
2 years. So this is a very mobile generation. They're very talented, even though some might argue about work ethic and everything else. They still bring it in, and they're their next workforce, aren't they? So how do you get them in there? And especially if you don't use something like bring your own device. Have you heard of Acquire Hire? Anybody know what that is? Well, it means that Maurice over here, he has a company, and he wants me to come to work for me, and I work for another company. But I don't want to go to work for him. Maurice is loaded. He's got a bunch of money. So he just buys my company.
I like this dream already.
Well, that's a good dream if Maurice is working for a company that's got a lot of money, right? He can just buy up another company. But what about you in local government and school system? How many times you done that? Ain't gonna happen, is it? So we have to use a lot of tools and so forth to bring our workforce in. And so that's what we're looking at as part of the choices for working in private county. How do you provide choices and so forth that employees will appreciate and add value to, and hopefully get some of that younger generation there in the workforce? So I want you to think about the possibilities a little bit. You ask, why would we do this? Well, when I go with bring your own device, how many types of devices come in? Pardon me? Tons. All different types of devices, right? And a lot of times it's the latest technology. Now, if you are trying to control everything and put one device out there, would you have that same opportunity? No. I mean, I bring in a new phone, you bring in a new phone, you bring in a new phone. They might buy all different brands and so forth. We can actually see how they fit into the network and how we can take advantage of this technology. So having that latest technology come in is a great tool for you to learn about how do you move your operation forward instead of just, you know, that gradual upgrade that you might do sometime in the future. The other thing is, it's very unique, isn't it? How many types of e-readers? 250. I don't even want to think about e-readers in 250, but if you look at tablets and so forth and smartphones, how many types of those? And there's probably more than 250 if you look at that particular category. So there's a lot of technology that you can come in and you can try out by bringing your own device that you really wouldn't do. So what it gives you is a melting pot of innovation. And I have a guy down the hall from me, his name is Jason, works in the fire marshal's office, and he's usually carrying around several different phones. And Stephanie back there will tell you, he's always coming in and saying, have you seen this app? Have you seen this? Have you seen what this will do? And we've adopted several of the things that he's brought in. Probably if it was up to the technology department to find those things, we would have never seen them. So you have all of these things that's coming together now. It's great for bring your own device, but it does create some problems there. I'll tell you what we currently have on our system, and this is an inventory from yesterday. And if you look at it, you'll see we've got 175 Android phones on there, 119 iPhones. Okay, for the Android people, you're winning. Okay. I'm going to start folks with the BlackBerries, we still got some BlackBerries too, don't we? So they're all up there. There's 51 iPads attached to this. There's one Windows phone. Okay, that's okay. We don't care. And I've got down here 2 notebook computers. Now we have a lot more than 2 notebook computers, but these are 2 personal notebook computers, and I put that down simply because bring your own device. We don't care on the device, but the only thing we have as far as notebook computers or desktops is 2 devices that's been hooked up. The wireless devices and so forth, Ken brought out a very good point. Our network, that is a problem with bring your own device, but I'm not sure it's going to be a problem with bring your own device or just the fact that the wireless carriers have said we're going to limit data. Now everybody that's got a smart device and coming into a public building that has public Wi-Fi is hooked into our network. In fact, I'll tell you a little story. I was sitting at my desk one morning and hear the courthouse, the Wi-Fi system has went down in the courthouse. And we're like, why? It completely saturated and went down. Well, many of you may deal with the state court system and their scheduling, and they're great schedulers. 300 people from traffic court on Monday morning. All those folks had walked in with wireless devices, saturated our network. The funny thing was, one of them used their smart device to call the fire marshal's office, and he cleared the courtroom. So anyway, you're going to saturate your networks, and you notice I've got up here up to 30,000 plus public access. We do provide internet service for some of the municipalities and wireless. So we've had times that it's hit over 30,000 devices that's attached to those wireless networks and our internal networks. Normally, within our organization, we run somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 devices that's hitting that thing constantly. We are looking to triple our bandwidth and hopefully do that and to provide a redundant pathway. You had multiple pathways into yours, I think. But if you're going to go this route with all these devices and bring your own device, you do have to have the network behind it to support it. I'm going to drop out this presentation there. And I'm going to bring up a little program called GoodReader, and I'm going to bring up our mobile device acceptable use. And can I just spend the rest of the afternoon just read this to them? I'm not going to do that. I brought it up just to prove that we have a policy. But I know you can't read this, and I promised the other group I'm going to put this on the nclgisa listserv after this, so it'll be out there. But basically, you'll notice it says up there, a county-owned device or personal device. So this was one of the first policies stating that we could have personal devices on the network. And basically, what we're asking them with in this end-user agreement is that it doesn't matter if it's county-owned or personal-owned, you're still playing by the same rules. And if you go through this policy, there's a lot of stuff that's legalese that our attorneys have went through, fine-tooth comb a number of times. School of Government, Shannon, that group has reviewed it along with some of their lawyers. So I don't know all the legal terms that it does mean in here, to be honest with you. But basically it says you can have a personal device on our network. If you do have a personal device, you agree to be just as responsible with that personal device as if it was a county device. If you lose that device, you give us the right to blow it away. No questions asked. And plus you sign all kind of things about being responsible, and you can be fired if you don't do this, that, and the other. So there's a lot in this particular one, but you can see the devices up there, and that we're being device agnostic too. We're not really worried about what type of device, but we're putting them into play. Another one that we put into place to go along with this is a mobile reimbursement policy. And basically this says, mainly related to smartphones, but it gives our department heads and our folks the ability to reimburse for the use of their phones. And I was telling earlier, one of the things that really convinced me that we need to go down this route is I watched a deputy come in one day and he had 3 phones hooked to a belt, looked like Batman, you know, with everything that was on it. And the sad fact is he was carrying so much technology that the thief run by him. There's absolutely no way he could call him. There's too much on him. But he had 3 phones on there, one from Sprint, one was a sheriff's department phone, and well, first one was a Sprint Nextel, which the sheriff's department was using, a sheriff's department's phone, and then his own personal phone. And we're like, this is crazy. You know, why are we making people carry multiple devices around? So we've gotten rid of most of that. But anyway, it basically says that if you're using a mobile phone, your personal phone, for county business, and you have to have that particular technology to do your work, then we can reimburse you for it. It's a department head decision and so forth. There's a whole lot of stuff in here, but it basically says the employee is responsible for negotiating the contract and everything that they have. They're responsible for the phone and taking care of it. But this is probably what you want to see here, and I'll bring it up a little bit. How much do we reimburse? And so we broke it down on different terminology. We actually did some research, and you can't just go in the first day and get reimbursed. You have to show some data here. But $22 a month if you are low usage, medium usage is $34, and high usage is $39. If there's a data add-on, it's $17 a month. And of course, with any government policy, there's so many ins and outs of this that's not even funny. The department head can renegotiate if that's not enough. But anyway, it allows people to be reimbursed for using their own device. You mentioned that you were not going to touch those devices. We actually, if somebody brings in a new phone, it's their phone. When I'm saying phone here, I'm really talking about a smart device. I'm not really saying this is a regular cell phone. If they bring in a smart device, we help them set it up. We put in everything that we need to put on there to feel secure about it. And if it breaks and we can help them fix it, we do help them fix it, because we feel like it's better to get our employees back into production using these things than it is to say, oh, we don't touch them. And so we have incurred some personnel time, probably 20 to 30 hours a month on that. But we feel like it's a worthwhile investment. Guess I'm about to run out of steam here. We've done all that, so I'll open it up for questions. Yes.
One comment and a question. Comment was that we're doing this in our agency, and we had a lot of broken cell phones, and then all of a sudden when it was their cell phone, we don't have broken other ones anymore. That's one comment. And then the question I have is now that Verizon and AT&T have gone to this share everything pot where you just get unlimited minutes and it's more expensive now, I mean, is that going to stand, or you guys are it does that?
No, somewhere in the policy here it says that this is reviewed on a yearly basis. So the longest they would be stuck with this plan is a year, and the county may decide to change it. But if it is, keep in mind, they're using these for personal too. Now, one thing we did find we lost is you had shared minutes, and we had people that used a lot of minutes and others that didn't use much. So if you take them out of the plan, that decreases the shared minutes. But so far, it's not affected our cost internally at all. Yes.
Terry, I think we have, if I can speak on behalf of most of the folks in this room, the whole bring your own device, that seems manageable. What's really scary to me is it'll encourage people to download their own apps and ultimately store the county or the municipality's data off in the cloud without us knowing about it. Now, we still have statutory responsibilities to respond to public records laws. We still need to be able to get that data shared across departments. My big fear is, how do we manage data when we're ceding the storage decisions to users who can do it and be gone in that 2-year period?
And that's a darn good question. And part of this policy, as part of the protection there, is saying that you're going to store the documents that are related to public records and so forth in a proper manner. probably most of you are familiar with Dropbox or some particular service like that. A lot of our folks do use Dropbox. In fact, we use Dropbox with our commissioners. But Dropbox is a secondary. What goes in there in those files are supposed to go on network storage too. For example, I have Dropbox on basically everything I got, but it's backed up to the network drive. So you do have to have some processes and procedures in place to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm not sure you can ever ensure it will happen.
What's your confidence that your user community is being diligent about that?
My confidence level, I don't know. I do know that whenever it comes to some of the department heads, it's not too high.
Yeah.
When it comes to other folks, maybe at a different level, it's probably pretty high.
And I guess the underlying message here is there needs to be a real paradigm shift. It's no longer just IT's responsibility to take care of data archival. And we've hammered that into our users for decades. You put it on a shared drive, we're going to back it up, we'll be in charge of it. We need to make sure, as people make these decisions, that there's a change in mindset about who's responsible for that data.
Actually, our county attorney has lectured department heads about whose responsibility it is, and if something gets lost, who she's coming after. So we've had those discussions. Do they make it all the way down the line? In some departments, yes, and some departments are very meticulous about the way they store data. Others, my confidence level is not that high.
Honestly, though, it's made the people more productive. I mean, the users that want to use the technology, it's helped them. It hasn't hindered them. I mean, it's just made them more, and it's made them happy. They're not aggravated because they can't do their job. They're not frustrated anymore. I mean, honestly, I haven't seen anything negative yet. I'm not saying that the day won't come, but.
I think you guys are hitting on some key points as it relates to engaging your customer base. Even before you even think about doing any of the technical stuff, Todd hit a point. You really need to saturate your user community with this culture of this. We're all in this together, especially as it relates to data. Even with public records law, it's really not IT. It's the custodian of the data, right? So training users about all these different things is important. This is not even counting BYOD. So really, that thing needs to be going regardless of BYOD. Now you're just adding another component to that. And then you bring up another good point is that it does change your customer's perception of the IT department when you do something like BYOD. Whether it's good or bad, some consider IT command and control, right? It's our network. Come on, you guys said yes, it is. It's our apps, and that leaves sometimes a bad taste in customers' mouth, and they find workarounds. They will find a workaround. If you put too many safeguards in place, they will find a workaround. In schools, kids find workarounds. In local government, employees find workarounds. At the School of Government, me and Shannon, we find workarounds. If we want, we find the workaround. So I think having those discussions early on help eliminate those workarounds, and then you get the type of network and type of structure in place that will support BYOD, will support any of the new things that are coming down the pipe. Because I think BYOD is really getting old right about now. Something else is coming, whatever that something else is. Great. Butch,
Real brief technical question. Do you share a pre-shared key for your folks to get on their own device onto your Wi-Fi? How do you manage that? Bring your own device in here, you can get on our Wi-Fi. How do you manage that pre-shared key or device authentication or whatever? How do you manage that?
There's not really a key there. It is authentication whenever they go into the web-based services. Basically, we're attaching to web-based services, and it could be a web-based application which they have to authenticate, or it could be through Citrix. We run a lot off of Citrix.
My answer is something on the web-based applications, you authenticate off the AD that way, but a device that is incapable of authenticating even through that mechanism, they're just disallowed access to network resources. And I know that's a little bit more hammer on the end user approach, but for our information, because we are a K-12 institution, any security breach becomes newsworthy instantly. So we take it very seriously. So if they cannot authenticate Active Directory, that's just not going to happen.
I live in the county too, by the way, so we appreciate that.
Let me get you, Butch, then Brad, and Terry. Did you have a question? So Butch, Brad, and Terry, and then I think we're gonna let everyone go. Okay. So it's
Just as leading, so first of all, appreciate the presentations. K-12, I kind of got my mind around BYOD right up into the civics discussion. That's when my mind cracks and the brain starts. So if you can give the K-12 community a 1, 2, 3 of how to avoid that, I think I could actually get okay with bandwidth optimization, network control access, bandwidth, all those things. But when you talk about virtualization on top of having no engineers to support it right now, do I have to?
No, you don't have to do it. One of the things that, and one of the great things about BYOD is you can make it fit your environment. If you don't have staff to do certain things, then you don't do those things. But one of the things you can do is there are a lot of ways that you can make things accessible through web applications, which are by design device agnostic, and they can authenticate that way, and they can gain access to databases that way. That is the way we're going currently. We're going to engage in the Citrix conversation, but I'll be honest with you, my first encounter with Citrix, I don't know how you guys deal with Citrix, but my first encounter, I came in, I just wanted to know about a couple of apps that I wanted to virtualize to be able to pull into some of these devices. And the guy wouldn't talk to me about that at all. He just refused. All he wanted to do was take all my 35,000 desktops, make them thin clients, and charge me $4 million a year. And the way I could afford that is lay off 90% of my staff. I mean, that's what he told me. So that conversation didn't go well. He had to leave and never come back. I'm sorry about that. I found a new vendor. I'm going to try again because they do have a fairly strong product. I'm also looking at VMware. Yeah, it's huge dollars. It is huge dollars.
One of the discussions that we've had with vendors, and I think here again, things are changing, and we have to realize that they're changing, is that we want access from tablets and all kinds of smart devices, and a lot of the vendors, oh, well, you just go in through Citrix and you got it. Well, that's not the right answer. That's only a temporary solution. If you're going to use these, we need to be stressing that you need to create an app that allows us to get to the application and work it from wherever, whenever, by whoever. And to give you a good example, we use Intergov in our building permitting software, and inspectors use it in the field. Well, they had it on their notebooks and so forth, and the first step was, well, we can run it through Citrix on the tablets, and we're like, nah, that's just not good enough. So they are now providing us an app that we can go in, and our building inspectors could carry an iPad out there and do the inspection on it as opposed to. So it's going to take us stepping up to the plate and saying, we don't want that old way of program design. You need to design it so we can use these tablets and so forth. This is where we're going, and that's the only way we can support you.
And then once you solve the application issue, accessing the user's home drive, and all the students are using an H drive on our servers, becomes a second piece of that. So
That really, for the K2 environment, authentication is for us. We've gone ahead and all of our students, all our staff has a ADA account across the board.
most cases, you guys have segmented the data center from the public transit that you're using with these devices out there, so they're going in through web applications or laptops, or they're just running off. It's like a segment of your network that's the public internet, basically. You're just giving them a resource to get back into your data center. Is that what you're trying to do?
No, there's actually web apps that we're running that they can get there for. For example, the mail goes through webmail, and then
But what if they bring in a laptop? Now, so we're talking about the smart devices, but we're saying bring your own device. It can be any device. So they're bringing in a laptop. That's not sitting on your network, right? I mean, it's like a public segment to your network that you're giving them open access to, and then they're still having to secure whatever that is, a VPN or something like that.
Basically, I didn't go through this whole policy over here, but it basically gives us the right to make decisions on that particular device. Those two particular laptops that they're using, they're running security that we've put on there, and it does exactly what Ken said. Whenever the network goes out, it looks to see, is it secure and is it updated? And if it's not, then it don't get on.
Guilford County, we have a couple of mechanisms. For a certain set of users, we have VPN accounts. So as soon as they turn on VPN, that is a secure socket connection. So all that is then the same as if you were in network. We do have several apps that we have public facing, but you have to authenticate to get in. Our SharePoint is outward facing. You still, once you arrive at the SharePoint site, you authenticate and then get into just the SharePoint app at that point. And you can do that through an Android, through an iPad, and off the web.
So I just want to make sure I'm saying exactly what I'm trying to say. Is it your devices that you own that people aren't bringing on? Do you have them on a separate network?
The ones we own, we have in Guilford County Schools, we have authenticated for those that we own and manage. That means we have the whole suite of coverage. I'm just going to say iPads. We don't have a mechanism to manage, so school purchase ones go into a guest account, but it's a separate guest network that we can push the SSID and the password onto those devices and force them into kind of a safe zone. It's still filtered, but it's no server access at all. And then devices that are brought in from the wild, those get guest access only, and they have to go through NAC. And the only thing we're checking is, do you have up-to-date virus protection? And it has a system, if they start behaving weird, they start trying multiple passwords or anything like that, I hate to say it, we have a mad Russian Oleg, whose job is he monitors this, and he sees that, he shuts off entire sections of network. And if he doesn't shut off fast enough, he gets in his car and then hits warp speed, and drives to the site, and he powers them down. It's great to have an Oleg, I'm telling you, because you don't have any kind of outbreak at all, ever.
Thank you.
Sure, never had a mad rush.
He's awesome. He's really good at his job.
Terry, with your apps, like if a user goes out and finds an app out there that does a better job than what you could provide, how are you handling that if that user, I mean, if you say, okay, this is a great app, we're going to deploy it, everybody should download this app, and it's, there's a cost to it. If an employee, if they leave, I mean, do they have to buy that? Does the new person taking that position, do they have to rebuy that app? I mean, how are you handling that?
Well, that's a good question, and we really haven't looked at that as too much of a cost because none of the apps that we have, if you look on my notebook here, or iPad here, I understand there's quite a few apps on there. The most expensive app on there is $19.99. So we're not talking huge amounts of expense unless you get just really a lot of them. But if somebody leaves their particular should be passed on to whoever's there. If the county's bought these. Now, we have a lot of people that buy their own. So it's gonna be a matter of tracking, and it is up to the department to track that, as to, you know, what they would get back. We had our assistant county manager leave, and he did pay, for the apps that the county had taken. And, I'm not sure we've had anybody else actually leave that, had their own. Most of the department heads have their own, as far as the iPads and so forth.
Thank you guys for coming to the BYOD session. I'm probably sitting here for hours to talk about this, but I'm very aware that we have casino night and more gifts and prizes. So, in general, in the Expo Center, one of the special thanks to Terry Bledsoe and Ken Woody for being our presenters today.